Okay, Tony Rodrigues, welcome to Wake Up, Wake Up.
Hello. Good morning. I'm
Good
kidding.
morning. It's so good to see your face again.
Yes, you too. It's been a while. Hi.
It has been a while.
Well, and I'm glad, like I saw your post, was that it was the day before yesterday that you fell out, you wiped out on a skateboard.
Yeah.
Right. And you got injured. Look at you. And you were like, you took
Can't move
cracks.
my finger.
You took some hard knocks there. Yeah. So I'm glad you made it.
Thanks. My knee's still like, I literally, I fell and it was so stupid. It's so embarrassing how I fell. So I was waiting for this to go down this little out of the circle 7-Eleven or something to go into the street that's a really smooth street, and it has little kickers that you go over, and there was a car coming, so I'm just going really slow because I see it coming, and my brother's right behind me on his skateboard, and I'm on my phone texting somebody, but I'm going real slow, so if you hit a crack you should go fast or at an angle, and I'm going slow straight, so I'm just doo-doo. And then all of a sudden the board stops, and I'm oh shit, and then but then I get, it's a downhill pavement, and a driveway, and so I hit the driveway and I go down, but the skateboard stays there. And my brother's all of a sudden you were there and then you weren't there. It was like a waterfall.
You look like it took a spill, but you know what though? You made the best of it because you posted pictures of you hurt and then smiling. You know what I mean? It was endearing. I really I saw that and I thought she's totally making the best of it.
But on the DL, I literally, I think I hit my head when I hit down, because within a minute, when I was looking straight, a little dot formed, and then it got bigger and bigger. And as I was looking straight, I couldn't see for an hour. Wow, and I've been hungover all day today, like a migraine hangover.
Yeah, like a mild concussion. Okay. Seriously, take it
I was
easy on yourself.
skateboarding home, and I was 7 minutes away from my house, so I had to skateboard back home, and I was I just followed the outline of my brother, just hoping that I didn't hit any more cracks. I just kind of
Jeez.
But I mean, it's so embarrassing to fall doing that when we hit the parking garages. We're going full speed down both ways, and I'm just doo, boom, and I have.
Well, yeah, and you were texting too, so let that be a lesson to anybody watching.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever. I'm not going to admit publicly that I text and drive, but sometimes I feel like I'm pretty good at it. But it's so dangerous, and you can tell people that you can see it when people are doing it.
So true, and I
always advice.
I try to it's almost now when you're driving, you have to check their eyes and check how their body language is doing. You know what I mean? When someone's kind of going like that, I'm are they drunk or are they on their phone? And I just kind of go around them because I'm a race car driver. It's
yeah. Well, when they're going really slow, something's wrong because who wants to go slow anywhere?
Right.
And they always drift off and then swerve at the last minute. So that's obviously the hit send.
Right.
And they went, oh shit. And then got back on the road, or they're still in the middle of it.
Do you ride?
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. And I try to have if I can't, if you call me and if it doesn't connect to my Bluetooth and I can't press it on my car, then I just call you when I get back, and I try not to text unless I'm at a stoplight. That's my I'm not perfect. I sometimes don't abide by my own rules, but
I got to the point where we're rambling. But I got to the point where I'd rather do calls in the car, through the sounds of it,
yeah.
At the hands-free, when I find, because I resisted ever hooking up Bluetooth to anything because I don't believe in it.
Right.
But I finally did. I got a car that does it automatically as soon as you get in. It's connects. And so now I prefer to do call. I'll go out there and do calls sometimes, it's just convenient.
I did the same thing, but I live with my brother, and he's that when you're in the car, everybody can hear your conversation. If it's on, he goes, if you're on the phone in the car, no one can hear your conversation. If you're on the phone in the car phone, everybody can hear.
Yep.
I was good to know.
Hey, so where did we leave off? Last time we were talking, you did not record that and put that out.
I didn't put that out.
A deep.
No, because I didn't want to. Well, I know we're recording right now, but there was just too many people on there, I think. And
yeah, we were all over the place, and it got heavy fast. It got heavy.
So this is gonna be my first time. I'm gonna put you on my YouTube channel. And so this is going to be my first week. I'm waiting that I'll be posting for my YouTube channel. But I want, do you want to give like the short version about yourself, how to represent yourself, or the long version? Like, what do you prefer?
Well, I
Whatever you want to do.
mean, you know, anymore I get both. I get people that ask for both, like, whoa, what exactly happened? And a lot of people are like, you know, dumbfounded by it. And especially,
I love your story.
where were you? They hear my story and they go, what about your parents? What about you know, like they don't understand.
They're not understanding that you get put back.
The mechanics of it, how it went. And so you really got to slow down and explain it for that. But the short end of it was that I was taken. I did a 20-year tour. Some people coined the phrase 20 and back. They referred to it as a tour while I was up there, 20-year tour. And basically ETs, human organizations that work with ETs, called, the other coined phrase is Secret Space Program. I was taken and put through a 20 and back, lived for 20 years. When I was 10 years old, I lived for 20 years, and then they put me back in time, put me back in my original body that was still 10 years old, erased my memories, and put me back in bed of just a few minutes after I was taken. So that's a phenomenon that happens.
Right.
And there's quite a bit of people have come forward. And so I lived through that, and I didn't remember any of it until later in life, from May of 2015, when I had a breakthrough and I got all the memories back. It was like a veil lifted and I got big chunks of memories and I remembered it. And I started working with some researchers over the next year, and a lot of things that I remembered checked out. Some things didn't check out because in the beginning, the memories are just all over the place. And I was like, with researchers, some of them are really grill you. And a few of my memories didn't check out because I was like desperate to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, no, I can't work with you anymore. But fortunately, some other things that I did remember did check out and validated my story. And I'm still at it. Look, I'm still at it. Like just now before I logged on here. So here's one, for instance. Like there's a million of these. I could go on and I tell people to believe it. But I was writing. So I'm in the process of writing the book. And how I do that is every morning I make a recording, and then I have a person that's helping me write it, that's transcribing it for me. And so I make an audio recording and then I email it. And then I do that in my car, on the Bluetooth in my car. Same thing in my phone. Boom. And I just talk in the car, and then because I got an hour drive to work. So
perfect.
That's how I'm doing the book. So this morning I remembered, I went, wait a minute. The last year that I was in Seattle. So people that don't know, I was on Earth for the first 8 years. That out of that 20 years that I was taken, it was.
And what part of Earth were you in?
I originally was in Inyokern in Southern California, and then taken to Seattle, an island around Seattle, and then to Peru, Puerto Tawantinsuyo, Peru, which is Boca, Colorado nowadays. I think it's been renamed to Boca, Colorado, Peru.
Oh, really?
Puerto, or it has both names. It's under both names. When I was there, it was Tawantinsuyo. And I'm saying it wrong. They always make fun of me for mispronouncing it. But Puerto Tawantinsuyo, it's in the jungle. And I did intuitive stuff. And they were smuggling drugs. And it was under a government program, our government. What
was it like living in the jungle?
It was, I liked it. It was scary. They were like, don't leave. There's panthers and there's stuff. Bugs are going to get you. I did get stung, I think, a couple times. But they're like, bugs are going to get you. Don't live out, And then also that area is pretty lawless. There's people carrying guns around. There's people get murdered there. It's not as safe. It's a lawless area. It still is. It's like the Wild West. But other than that, after I was there a year and people and I was accepted by them, they were very loving. It was a very loving, like a family kind of family atmosphere. Once you're kind of inside on the inn.
In the town?
I missed it. Yes. And I missed it. And I for the rest of those 20 years I went into the space program, and the rest of the time I missed Peru the most out of anywhere.
One of my best friends is from Peru, and they're just, well, I can't say the whole country is like her, but she's just so amazing. But she's just so full of life and always wants to dance, and it just has this, something.
It seems like that's kind of my take. Not everybody was like that, but there were a lot of people that were very flamboyant, very nonchalant. They didn't. It was it was a river town, so it wasn't as materialistically oriented as the town I live in now. you know, where they weren't trying to up each other and get better things. They were more about just being happy with what they had. And
sounds amazing.
That was kind of the lifestyle there.
So you went for 20 years. What was your favorite part? Okay, so my channel is, what I would like to focus on is, I think we talked about last time, is healing and new technologies for the future of humans.
I didn't finish what I was going to say though.
I'm sorry.
Let me just cap this up. But that's
okay,
you're great.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Carry on.
We'll get to that. But what happened was, I was writing the book. Sorry, I'm sorry,
I got sidetracked.
Writing the book, and I remembered that the last year that I was in Seattle would have been 87, around 87, and it was hot. It was warm. The winter from 86 to 87, that New Year's, that winter was. And I remember that everybody was like, "Man, we didn't get any snow." It was warm, and I went, "Wait a minute. There's got to be a record of that somewhere." So just before you came on for this interview, I was looking on a website, and sure enough, there was a historical record. It was like 5 to 10 degrees warmer on average that year. So that was like a memory, right? You get what I'm saying? Like, see how that lines up? And it's like, I've had that happen 100 times with everything that I remember. It's not, is it concrete proof that ETs exist? No. Is it concrete proof of what happened? Concrete? No. Is it a coincidence? Yeah. But I've got 100 coincidences like that I've documented with people and researchers. It's just every time I check something out like that I remember something new and I check it out, it pans out. You know, I kind of, especially in the beginning in 2015, I wish that it would have proved me wrong, that those things would have proved me wrong. And it didn't.
And I think you said last time that about Seattle, that how you had never been there, but before during the 20 back, you went there. And then you looked on the Google Maps and everything was as you thought it was.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So in the very beginning, like, I was totally shocked how I remembered everything. You know what I mean? Like, I remembered the house, the swimming pool, everything. And I went on Google Maps and I remembered the house well enough to where I could spot it. And I went, oh, wow. And I saw the island, and I remembered the names of the ferries that go back and forth because, you know, they have ferry service. They have certain names. And I went, wow, there it is. It's just how I remember it. And I went and I found the house. I went, holy shit. I went, oh my God, it's real. And then, so that was in May of 15. So May, June probably when I found, it was a couple weeks later. So still May. The following year, I went there. I took a trip. And, you know, so I have family members, my sister, my mom, everybody I grew up with, they can tell you that I'd never been to Seattle. I mean, that's something that's provable. It's easy. It's an easy thing to do. I've never been to Seattle, not even passing through. My dad was from Hawaii. And so when I was a kid, we always went to Hawaii for vacation, and we'd always go through California. You fly to LA from Detroit. Anyhow, never been to Seattle. I went there and I stayed there for one night, and then I drove to the island. And I was up the night before on Google and mapped where the house was, and I was going to drive there. And when I got into the town, I went, whoa, this is the way. I remembered it, the way. And I turned. I did not go the way that Google Maps took me. I went the way that I remembered when I was living there.
Wow.
And it turned out to be the better route, because the Google Maps way took you over like a quarter mile of dirt road. It was a shorter distance, but it was dirt road. And I took a paved way, exactly how she used to take me when I was there. So it's like, that happened. And I remembered everything. I remembered the store, where the gas stations were. I knew my way around it. You know, the island, it was freaky.
How did that make you feel when you realized that this is real?
Okay. So the time I was there, so with anybody that doesn't know, that when I was taken, I was a slave. I was not taken and then given a job or a position of authority ever, not one. Really, you know, I did have a crew in the end. In the last few years, I was promoted, but I was still a slave essentially. When I was there, I had zero freedoms, and I had put up with a lot of abuse. And I even, after Peru, came back to Seattle, and it was like the pedogate stuff. I was used as a sex slave as a teen boy there, and it was the guy that owned me was a billionaire. He owned me, and he was a billionaire, and he was doing political fundraisers, and they were having parties. Exactly, it was like satanic rituals, and they were having parties just like you hear, you know what I mean, with the Pizzagate stuff. And also, that's another part of my testimony that's validates it, because I said all that stuff in 2015, long before the Hillary emails or any of the Pizzagate, and all that never happened. And now it's coming to light. It's still going. I mean, it's still being shown.
How many people were slaves with you at the island in Seattle?
Boys came and went. So I think they kept the girls in a different house, and there were girls, and typically there were between 6 and 8 at the house there. You know, like it was like a foster home kind of situation. It was their own private house. The house was like 6,000 square feet. It was big.
Mm-hmm.
We had the downstairs, we had the basement that had bedrooms in it with bunk beds. And it was like living in a foster home. But a lot of the boys, like always, like 3 or 4 boys would come and go. They would go and you'd never see them again. And then they would usually younger. They were usually, you know, less than 10 years old, and they would come and go. You asked me something a second ago.
People to wrap this around their head. When I talk to people about human slavery, that right now on the planet, there's more humans than there have ever been in the history of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and it's hard for people to realize it unless you've been a part of it, that it is existing right underneath our noses.
Look, it's shocking, the cover up. Like, so we have the Epstein Island stuff in the news. You know what I mean? They've admitted that. And they are saying that Epstein used to pick up girls that were like 15 and 16 and 17, just barely underage. And then he'd pay them $200 for a massage and then, you know what I mean, seduce them. That's what they would have you believe that. But that's not what this society was about. They had it down to a science. They knew exactly what they were doing. And it started much, much younger than that. All of the people were younger that were involved. And in fact, there were a lot of times that I got passed up. They did the lineup where we'd line up and the person that was going to pay for us for service was going to come. And I was always too old. And I was there from like 13 to 16, 13 and a half.
People come to the place and then they would line you up for the people coming to their parties?
Yes, exactly. And they would choose the boys that they want. And they always took the younger ones. I was already, like I said, at 13 years old, I was already too old.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's kind of, it's kind of hard to talk about. It's a hard pill to swallow. Right. And this is one of those things, like when I got those memories in the beginning, you know what I mean? I was hoping that when I checked out little things like the weather that year in 87, when I checked out the little things, I wanted them to prove me wrong. Right. So that I could find some other reason to have these screwed up memories, you know.
How did you, or how are you dealing with those emotions?
Well, in the beginning, it was super tough. And you know what? Here's the thing. The thing that's weird is that there's really there's not a lot of people that have been through 20 and backs that have gone through that kind of version of things that remember it. It's a very, very, very small amount of people that get their memories back for whatever reason.
But you're saying how many people that get their memories back first do they take?
Yeah, right. So if they take 1,000 people, like 30 people get their memories back. So, and it's varied, and your service there is varied. Not everybody went through what I went through. I was like illegally taken. I could think that, I was off record. Like somebody had access to the program.
You want to tell them about the story about how you got taken, which is, sure. It's still crazy to me about how the reason that you got taken.
I'm in Michigan, and I'm from Southern Michigan, and I was living Southeastern Michigan, really, and we had an old farmhouse, and I was in the talented and gifted program in 4th grade. It was the year of 4th grade. It was 81 to 82 school year, and I got chosen, and it's like top 5% of the school, and it was like advanced learning. We met every Wednesday in the library. There was a boy in there that was radically smarter than everybody, and he came to school in a limousine. A limousine dropped him off, which we were not that kind of school. So that it's like a rural farming factory town kind of income level. So that was super, you know what I mean? Like out of the ordinary.
Right.
Because he was like an alpha kid in the class, I wanted to also prove that I was smart, and I would pick on him, and I was like mean to him a few times. And he said, one day, my dad's an Illuminati. What's your dad do? And I'm like, what is that Illuminati? Was that like a banker or something? Like I didn't know what he's talking about. I said, my dad works for General Motors. He's awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I was proud of myself and our life. And you got to think I was 10-year-old,
Yeah. Fourth grade. What
between
fourth graders just?
fourth grade, I was 9 to 10, right? It was like we were boys being boys. And then, so his dad came in later that year in April. So I figure it was around April that he was the judge for the science fair. And only the kids in the talented and gifted program entered the science fair. And I walked by them when we were setting up our exhibits in the cafeteria. And he said, Dad, that's that boy I told you about. He pointed me out to him. And they had some weird conversation. And he's like, and I remember he said, no, he doesn't deserve that. And his dad told him, like, Luke, you're going to have to learn how to do this. And it was like that night I woke up with a gray alien, with an ET. And it was a long thing, like when they came. But it was that night that I woke up with a gray and I was taken. That's when it began.
What was your response when you saw an alien in your room?
Super, okay, so what happened was when there was a lot of weird stuff going on. Like the phone was ringing. We had the old phones, the ring on the wall with the, let's see, 10, it was 1982. So we had the old phone and it would ring, and I'm thinking, why isn't anybody getting up to answer it? And then there were bright lights flashing outside, and we lived in a farmhouse very far away from anything that could shine a light on us. We were out, it was very secluded. We had like 13 acres, and it was in the middle of by itself. So there were lights shining down from the sky, like outside my window I could see. And then there was literally a ball of light came in and flew in, and I giggled. It talked. It made me giggle, and then it left, and then the lights everything went out, and I went back to sleep. And I woke up, and he was like right here, like your typical, what you see in the artwork, the gray. And I thought it was my dad. My dad always joked around. My dad had like a really, sick sense of humor. Like he always pulled jokes, like April Fool's joke.
You had a house of pranking?
Yeah, big time.
We had a big house. I said,
did you? Yeah. Well, I think it's a good thing, But so I'm going, Dad, take the mask off. Dad, you're not funny. Take the mask off. And it's like 2, 3 a.m. It's like way early in the morning. And I reached up and I touched it, and it was cold and wet, and it had big pores. Like I could feel holes. You know what I'm saying? Like giant pores. And I went, ah! And like before I could let a scream out, because that was my reaction, was to scream. It did something right here, and I was frozen. And I could move my eyes around, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And then I saw at the foot of my bed, like 3 or 4 short reptiles.
Like how tall was the gray and how tall was the reptile?
Like the gray was like 5.5 feet, probably. Like a normal, like a small to a mid-sized man size. And the reptiles were like 3 or 4 feet. They were barely on the edge of my bed. And they picked me up and carried me to the end of my bed, and there was a bright light, like a light. We walked into it.
And at the end of your bed?
Yeah, like by the window. There was a window there, but
there was a light before the window?
Yeah, it was like right there at the end of my bed. So, and then I lost conscious. I passed out. It zonked me out. And I woke up in a laboratory naked on a stainless steel table it was like a medical room, dark. It was dark. And there was a tall, like a white one there, a tall gray, like a white one, that same gray. And there was a hallway, and the door was rounded. It was round, like the room was round.
But was it open?
It was open to a hallway.
What do lights look like in there?
It was dark. It was dark in there. So here's the other thing: is back then I also wore glasses and I had horrible vision.
Oh yeah.
So I couldn't see, and I kept saying to them, "Please, can you guys make my eyes? Did you get my glasses?" I remember saying that, like, "Did you grab my glasses?" Because I thought, and they were talking. It was like telepathic. It was like right in your head when they talked.
Wow.
And they were like, "We're not going to hurt you. You know what I mean? We're just going to do some stuff on you. Just be calm. Nothing bad's going to happen to you," is what they were telling me. And I was like, "Yay!" I was just so happy because here were finally ETs, and I was going to tell the world.
Had you read a lot about aliens?
Yeah, well, back then, like I was into like Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and all those old sci-fi Buck Rogers and all that. So, the comics. And I was a sci-fi kid anyway. And so I was always, and so was my mom. That's the thing, my mom really was. My mom was always like a UFO buff, studying them back then, like the. And
that's a cool mom to have.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was into it, and I was thinking, here we go. This is it. They've landed, and they've chosen me to make sure that we're cool. And now tomorrow on the news, there's gonna be ETs, and it's gonna be a whole new world. Here's disclosure, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
First Contact is awesome. And that's what I thought was happening. And they ran some tests on me and took me for 20 years to put me in a 20 and back program. It was a program that was working with our government, because of the station. Like I woke up when they finally did their procedure on me to begin everything. The next day I woke up in Inyo Kern, California.
Did you see? Were your eyesight fixed? Was your eyesight fixed?
Yes.
Is it still fixed?
No. When they put me back, so look, the next morning when I woke up, I could see. Like I had my eye, like I had, 20/20 vision. That in the portable, it was a portable, it was like a broom, like a portable, the building. Right. And I had vision. I had normal vision at that point, and I had no memory. I woke up with amnesia.
Oh wow.
I had no memory of mom and dad or my sister, none of that. I was like, whoa. And I was having a hard time even articulating words at first. And they gave me, it was a doctor, a humans, and he gave me a medical examination, the stethoscope and the flashlight in my eyes. It was like he gave me an exam, and that went into like an MK Ultra, like a trauma mind control program.
Okay, I definitely have a question about that. But how many people do you think they were taking?
So what I equate it to is that these programs take people that are groomed for it and for different purposes for the programs, and it's life extension technology. So they can do it without erasing your brain, erasing your memories. And a lot of people are wise beyond their years all of a sudden. And you know what I mean? In our life, in our day-to-day life, like a lot of people in public go through these programs and they're secretive about it. I think that same way
when they return, all of a sudden
they still have their memories. I think, yeah, they still have their memories, and so they're 20 years older and smarter, but in the same body. I think that the people that owned me, which were bad people, had access to these programs and said, well, you know what? I want to run through 5 or 10 kids for me. I want some just to own, just for me. And I think that and I equate it like this: somebody that owns somebody that's like a CEO at a pop factory, that owns a Coca-Cola or Orange Crush, and then they have a special one like Orange Pineapple Crush, where just have a limited run. Mm-hmm. So let me get a case of that. Run through 2 more for me, and I'm gonna take those home for me. That's what we were. You get what I'm saying? Like we went through that program. There was about 12 kids in that program that went through, and they kind of cobbled it together. You could tell it wasn't their main facility. They were just using parts of some old programs that had been canceled.
But at first, when you didn't go to those people, right? You went to Peru, or is that the same?
No. First, it was Inyo Kern, and then I went. So it was the air base. It was an airfield in Inyo Kern, right next to China Lake, and
what did they do to you there?
It was like mind programming, mind control programming. They drugged us and made us watch movies that were sick for hours and hours and hours, for weeks and weeks, and they tortured us. The doctor would come in and hurt us and then make us watch. They gave us like hallucinogens, like drugs. And then we had a helmet with electrical shocks, and you could feel it. It would shock. And then the movie would change to the movie would be cartoons like Alice in Wonderland. And then it would be news clips of people getting shot and stuff. And then it would go to like animals being butchered, and the shocks would change, and it would change where it was shocking you. So it was like changing your brain chemistry, how your brain worked. And at the end of every day, he would ask us, so what did you think of the movie? He would get our question. He would question us, like, how do you feel? What are you feeling? How did you feel about the movie? And it was like stupid answers, but he was trying to gauge, like he had a book. And the doctor that did it, it was the first time. I'm getting a headache now, even thinking about it. The doctor that did it was his first time too. He was doing it for his program, for a different kind of funding of a program. And he was into remote viewing.
Oh.
We were being trained. At the end, after we went through a lot of the movies, they changed the movies. And then at the end, we went into a whole different kind of set of things, and it was about remote viewing. They were doing psychic stuff. And then it was like near death experience where they would drug us and we would almost die. And during that time, we were talking like to spirits and stuff, and we were giving them, like he was using that for remote viewing info. God, it gives me a hell of a headache even remembering that stuff.
Man. I wonder, I'm so sorry that you had to go through all of that experience. I can't even.
It was a long time ago. A lot of people, that's the reaction I get, Heidi. A lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you went through all that. But You got to understand, it was a very long time ago.
But
So
still for you, when you flooded back all these emotions, it was
it
kind of
was like
experience them all over again.
it was like 50 years ago for me. You know what I
Wow.
mean? Like that's the experience. That's how far back I'm remembering. You
How
know,
does the shocking the brain get you to out of your body?
so that was programming. It was like change. I don't know how it works, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But what the end result was, when it was all said and done, we were pretty effective at remote viewing, for one, and that's why went to Peru. So I went from there to
You were at
Seattle for like
training
2 weeks.
camp, and then they sent you out into the battle.
Yeah, right. It was like training, exactly. And then I went to Seattle for like 2 weeks, if that, like a week to two. It was like 2 weeks, and then they flew me to Peru, and then it was like shipments of cocaine going from Puerto Tawantinsuyo to Peru to Santa Marta, Colombia, and they
And
would
who was
drug me.
running the shipments?
The people there. I had a handler,
Mm-hmm.
and that people that lived in that town. It was like a part of that company, but he would drug me halfway into the flight. So because Colombia was like had security, like DEA agents and stuff. So they would drug me, and I would let them know if it was safe or if the weather was bad, because they had lost a plane, I guess, a few months prior to me being there, and that's why they had to pay for me, and they were upset about it. They didn't think I was going to work, but I did. And he said that there were times when I spoke fluent. I don't know Spanish. And he said there were times I spoke fluent Spanish. I said I was his grandma, and he was talking to his grandma. And then after a few weeks of it, because it was like 2 years that I did this every month. We went every month on a trip on that plane. And he would have a clipboard with questions from people in the town.
Oh, wow.
That he would ask me. And I don't remember anything. He would drug me. Like I said, it was like near death. It was like they gave me something. He could put an IV in my arm on the plane, and then I would just go out. And I guess during that time, I would speak as I was different people. There are times that I remember some things that I said, and when I basically, like, right before I was going to wake up, and right when I first went to sleep, I still kind of remember a little bit of like it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of things. There's like during that time, there was a lot of I don't know how else to word it. And this isn't the word that would say it correctly, okay? But there was a lot of spiritual stuff that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's different than that. It was more like I interacted with spiritual stuff.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I had spiritual stuff happen to me. It was more like I was interacting spiritually, and I have memories of it. I have memories like past life snippets. Like I remember being while I was under the whatever drugs that was.
Right.
Which whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is.
Do you know what?
But after a while, I lost the ability. I started to lose it. And he said that they would put me under, like closer to puberty. And he said he would put me under, and I would be incoherent. Like this, I would talk like in tongues, like blah, 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 And he did. It was like it was no good. So that's how I ended up going back to Seattle.
Oh, wow.
That's how I was. The people there, the town, they tried to buy me. They passed the hat, and they came up with a lot of money. And they were going to buy me.
Sweet.
They wanted to buy me and for me to stay. They wanted me to stay there. They begged for me to stay, but they wanted like $1 million for, you know what I mean? Like they wouldn't, so I had to go. And it was a cargo plane came and picked me up, and I went to California, and his wife was there, the owner. His wife was there, and she drove me back. We drove up, like, I don't know the name of the road, but it's like this, not the Pacific Coast Highway, but the one up the center. We drove up that road.
Okay. I'm not very familiar with that part of the state.
Me neither. But I did it back then, and I remember the road. So like when I drove back to Seattle in 2016, and like in my life, I remembered the road, man. The signs are different there because in Michigan the road signs are different.
Yeah.
And on that road there's like these keystone shaped signs that tell you where you're at. And I remembered those signs. I was like freaking out. Like I'm like, oh my God. Because I wanted to go there. You understand that I wanted to prove all this wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because then I could just go get some counseling.
Right.
And get on with my life. But it keeps proving right. It keeps panning out.
How cool would that be if you went to Peru and somebody there recognized you and
totally looked into it.
Yeah.
My friend who I'm talking about, she
So she raises money. She supports the school that's in Peru, and so we all have fundraisers a couple of
So
times.
you have to ask her where that's at. So I checked into it. So that was after I went to Seattle. My next thought, I was like, I got to go to Peru.
That's where you need to go.
And I had a friend of mine that's from like one of the coastal cities in Peru that speaks. He's from there, and I got a hold of him, and I was like, let's go, man. And he's like, where do you want to go? I said, Porto Tuantansuyo. He's like, what? He's like, why don't you go to Maldonado? I was like, no, I've got to go to Porto Tuantansuyo. I couldn't tell him why. Right. And he's like, no. He's like, dude, there's illegal gold mining there. They block the roads off. You got to fly in or you got to take a boat. They block the river and the gold. You could get shot, especially a gringo. Like he's like, I can't go there. And I'm from Peru. He's like, it's super dangerous to go there. You got to have a better reason than just tourists, And so it's kind of until an opportunity presents itself, I can't go explore that. But I will say this. So like last month, it was a little more than a month ago, I did a set of interviews that got translated into Spanish. They got subtitled into Spanish and went down there. And people from Porto Tuantansuyo saw it.
No way.
People that had been there saw it, and they reached out to her and they said, it's exactly how I described. They said he described it exactly. And that the plaza, so I remember that our first shipment of the plane, when we took our first shipment and came back, like a month later, they came with bulldozers and they cleared out a giant area in the middle of town. And it was just dirt. And I went there. He showed me the guy that was my handler, was the only person that spoke English in the village. So he was stuck with me. But he took me there, and the little kids were playing soccer, and he said, "This is what you did." He said, "Because you did, and we can resume these flights. We're doing this with the money from that flight, the first one that you did."
Oh wow!
And it was the plaza, and so I said that was in about 83.
Mm-hmm.
The people back then, they said yes, the plaza was built right around 83.
Wow!
So it got confirmed from people that were there. So I mean, like I would love to get. What's that?
What was it like along the river?
So what was neat was that it's the Madre de Dios, the Mother of God. I think that's the name of the river, the Madre de Dios.
Uh-huh.
But right at Porto Tuantansuyo, there's where two rivers meet. I think that's what Tuantansuyo means, is something like two into one or whatever.
Okay.
But there were two rivers that met, and the one river, he said, so this was in 83, so it would have been in the late 60s, he told me. Now I could be wrong here. I'm trying to remember this as best I can. He said it was like the late 60s that they started the gold mine upriver. And one of the rivers turned super muddy and the other one is clear. And it ruined, because it used to be a fisherman's town. The entire economy in that town was around fishermen, fishing from the river.
Mm-hmm.
And the gold mine ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
And it killed off their economy. It screwed them over. So they had to go into the cocaine business. And that's why, it took over as their economy. But you could see, he took me out there one time. He didn't want me going by the river. So the river, people that lived in the district of the town by the river, he said I should never go there, that they would kidnap me or they would do bad stuff to me. He's like, don't ever go. I'm basically on the east side of town. He's like, don't go there. And I had a little hut that I stayed by myself. Like I had my own room.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like 3 little town streets over from the plaza. And he would pick me up there. He said, meet me at the plaza tomorrow morning when you get up. And I would get up and go there. But the river.
How old are you now? 11? 10, 11?
Yeah, 11, 12, and 13.
You're living by yourself in a hut?
Yeah. Yep. I had a black and white TV, and I had a little like a outhouse bathroom. Like there was no running water, but it was like a bath. There was like a hole in the floor in the bathroom that I could use.
Wow.
And it was like, and I had a couch that I slept on. It was a couch, and at first there was no door, but then eventually they put up a door so that it would keep the bugs and stuff out, because I got slammed by I got malaria. I think, whoa. I never remember that before, but I had to get treated. I got bit up because the door was out, and I think it was malaria. They had to come and give me shots.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy. But anyhow, the river.
Don't they say if you are immune to malaria right now?
What, really?
I've
never had it. I've never had it as far as I know.
Well, if you did have it and they gave you the shots, then I think they say if you were immune to malaria, you're immune to something to the COVID. Is that right? I heard something.
Oh, I don't know.
I heard something in accumulation with that.
I wouldn't put too much trust in it because I have a lot of theories that they used a version of cloning for the technique.
Oh,
But
okay.
there's more than different ways of the technique. Like, I kind of got to get in and draw a diagram of how the memories
It's
work.
it's in your consciousness, but it might not be that in your actual body that you're in.
I think that there was a lot that there's so a lot of other people have come forward and said that the programs they have consciousness transference, like they, like the soldiers, like they get their body blown off and they can clone a new body and put the soldier's mind in it, and he just keeps going. And that a lot of the military programs they have that technology. So I think that was a version of that they used.
Right.
But
Which is a crazy idea in and of itself if you've never sat and thought about it.
right, and if that's true, then that means that our medical science is like totally looking in the wrong direction.
Right.
On purpose.
Right. You know what I've been thinking? Oh wait, were you?
No, keep going. You go. I want to talk about the river later.
Oh, no. Let's continue talking river because I've been thinking about the way that you lived with no memory for 20 years, but that I think is very interesting. But I want to hear more about the river first, and then I'll go in.
I was like super stoked when I went there, but you could see from the spot, you could see the side by the town on the coast of the town, and there was a lot of nicer buildings there. The buildings there tended to be nicer. It was painted, and it was a more lively area of the town. Like it was like the old town.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It was more built up, which is not fancy. It was like not a fancy, it was like dirt. It was like muddy streets, mud, not dirt. It was mud. But that area of town was like very interesting to me, but I wasn't supposed to go there. But you could see out from the river the mud from the gold mine that came down. And on the far side, like far away to the left, you could see the clear water. And he said that they would go up that river and go fishing, but it wasn't as good. And downriver. But then also while I was there, I saw them chum up piranhas. There's piranhas there, and they would chum them up. And I think it was like they were getting rid of some old animal, like they had animals and they made hamburger or whatever, and all the leftover stuff, they would just throw it out to the piranhas.
Oh.
And I saw it on the dock right there, all the piranhas doing their thing like that. I remember that. That was like always like, a huge memory to me. That was like you know what I mean? Like that's an exciting thing to see, especially for a kid.
And scary.
Right. And it's like mind blowing to think that they can eat like they do. Yeah.
I've never seen piranhas. I've only seen it in movies. And
yeah, they were all over that river. Like if you threw in any kind of blood, it didn't take but a few minutes and there would be piranha like crazy. And then down, so there was another like a ferry to go into town, and we actually went to the gold mine once. But there was a ferry to cross the river, and then you cross back down, and it was miles. It was a long drive. It was a horrible trip. But there, I saw chum piranhas too at the ferry.
Do you think that they say by the mines is so dangerous? Because my same friend, her cousin, I think about a year ago or a year and a half ago, went to an interview to be to work on an airplane as a stewardess, and she never came back. And she was only
Where'd she go?
No, they took her, and she's still missing. And she was young, beautiful, maybe 18 or 19.
Wow.
And so I have another friend who's a psychic friend, and he tuned in, and he said she was over in the town. It was like maybe 20 miles from where she was taken, where were the mining.
Wow.
And they said that
down. Are you saying in Peru, like down there?
Yeah.
So
that kind of makes me think of when he says not to go over there, is because he says that sex trafficking is so bad around the.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The sex trafficking, like I would have been taken into. Okay, what happened was they had. Okay, so that drug that he gave me, it was an IV. It was in an IV form, and they kept it cold. It was in an IV bag, and so they would get it sent to them. They'd get 6 of them every 6 months because it would go bad.
Who's sending it to him?
Whoever owned me, you know what I mean? Like whoever's running and pulling the strings, the people buying it on the other end. But they had to pay for me. I was being rented.
But maybe from our government to their government?
No, straight to them, straight to that town, straight to the people in town.
Straight to that town. So around the government, they're just dealing with that little town.
Probably the CIA. So the remote viewing class and all that stuff, I've found a paper trail going back to the CIA. from the
Oh,
CIA
wow.
declassified gov. There's a lot of that. I'm hoping to get a nice, like not a chapter, but like an area in the book I'm writing that have all those documents that kind of show it. Yeah, cool. But what happened was so they gave 1 bag per month for the flights, because the flights were, what happened was people would bring little amounts of cocaine up the river and drop it off, and it would go into a warehouse there.
Mm-hmm.
And when they had enough for a plane load, we would go. And it was supposed to be every month. But there were times when something happened. There was a storm. I don't know. There were times when something happened and we didn't go. So they had an extra dose of that shit to give me. So they sold me, they hired me out to the guy that owned the gold mine. He paid to have me come down there. And he ended up not paying because, so on the whole trip down there, by this time, this was like later on, I was already like 12. Mm-hmm. And I was starting to not be as good at it. Mm-hmm. You know, like I was losing the ability. And I was kind of family to them.
Right.
Like to Manuel. Oh, wow, I said his name. So Manuel, who was the guy that was my handler, I was kind of like family to them. Like we went over to his mom's house every Sunday for dinner, and he had a color TV.
I wonder if he was still alive.
I hope so. I would hope so. But he was young when he's only like 13 years older than me.
If he was 13 years older, he'd
be about 60 something, right? 61 right now. If he's still alive. He told me on the way down there, he said, look, like when we got, like he was worried. He didn't want to go. And I was like excited. We're going to see the gold mine. It was a trip. For me, it was a trip. And as we got closer, he said, look, he pulled me aside and he said, look, I don't know if you have any say of what happens when you're in there, when you're under, but don't give this guy anything. He's got enough money to buy you outright, and he kills kids. He said he kills kids. As soon as you're no good to him, he's going to shoot you and he's going to throw you in a river. He's like, don't give this guy anything. If you can help it, do not tell him anything that he needs. So I was like,
oh God, it gives me chills.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. So what happened was, so they took me, so we went to, and it was like desolate, like it's totally, the gold mining area is totally devastated. The jungle was completely devastated for like 2 miles in one direction and a half mile wide. It was like, you could see trees on the side, but it was totally messed up and super like gross, muddy, you know, like, you step in mud or dirt and it's one thing, but it was like grody.
Like mud up to your like.
Well, it was like there was like chemicals, like
like dirty mud.
Yeah, it was like disgust, like industrially disgusting what they had done. I was appalled at what they did to the jungle. And the other thing is,
wow,
you know, you live there, they learn that like the jungle is you know, I don't want to overstate it, but they have a very deep respect and appreciate, you know what I mean? I almost worship the jungle. The jungle is like a big deal. So it was devastated. And it was like sacrilege, right? Well, to their people, like the river and the jungles have spirits to them. Right. They believe that. So we went there. We were supposed to meet him, and he never showed up. And so somebody came in a truck, some guy, and it was like they were being mean to us, and they took me to like an office building. Not, you know, and when I say office building, I mean like a small little stick-built house that wasn't very big at all, that just had an office in it. That's it. With a bunch of, it was messy. And I went in there and they put me under. They set up, they didn't even have chairs. They stacked a bunch of boxes for me to lay on, because they were like, he's got to lay down when he does it. So they stacked a bunch of boxes and he put me under. They put a blanket on me. He put me under, and I guess that when I woke up, I was on the truck leaving. We were in the truck already, just pulling away, like just drilling out of the driveway of the gold mine. And I said, what happened? What's going on? And he laughed. He was smiling. Manuel was all smiles, and he was like stoked. I said, what happened? And I was like sick. I was like, I threw up. I was throwing up. And when we got back, it wasn't he's like, don't worry about it. Just go to sleep. You know, he's like, you're sick. When we got back, we went over the ferry and we got on the smooth road. Like it's like a 2-track, but it's smoother. When we got there, he was like, he asked you where the gold was, and you said it's everywhere. That was my answer. He said, where's the gold? Where should I look for gold? And I said, gold is everywhere. And I kept saying it over and over again. Gold's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so he was like, he got mad. He didn't want to pay. He didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like they had a falling out. He said it was a tense moment where they, you know what I mean? Like they puffed up on each other and everything.
Manuel puffed up, but
yeah, right. They all had guns.
Oh
You know
my
what I mean? Like it was like a showdown kind of thing. And they were like, he was like, they left. And so that was towards the end. I was like, so I felt it was neat for me because it was it was like a trip. I always wanted to go to Porto Maldonado back then because that's where they went for like food groceries. Like, you know, when they picked up supplies,
Uh-huh.
they would always send trucks to Porto Maldonado and they'd come back and people would talk about it. It was the big city, you know. I always wanted to go there, but it was like I was never allowed to do that.
Who in the town taught you about the spirits of the jungles? Like, who told you that?
Well, Manuel did all the talking to me. He would always talk. He took me fishing. Like there were times we went fishing. Like he spent time with
a
me.
big brother?
He was more like, he was a big brother, and he was like he was like an action person. Do you get what I'm saying? You know how some guys are all action? Like he didn't think much. He just instantly he was an action guy. He was like a ladies' man kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in his early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So he was really like high strung, you know what I mean? Like he was really like a gung ho person. And so he was like my big brother.
And when he would go fishing, he would tell you about what they thought about.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He was big on the river. He was very upset about the gold mining, how they did the river, because it was his like his grandparents that used to be fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
Like he said, you know what I'm saying? Like he gave me the history of that. See, this is weird because I'm telling you a history of a place that really I've never been.
Right.
Like, right? Do you see how weird? You see how strange this is? What an experience. And then for it to, if any of this goes out there and then checks out and comes back, like that's really what it's been like for me the whole time since I've come forward and made my first interview and did this. It's like the more I research, stuff pans out. But that's kind of what that's the time I remember there.
So when you left Peru and Manuel, you're probably sad because that was your first family that you kind of got attached to.
The day I left, Manuel said, up before that, he said, I don't even care about you. He's like, fine. He's like, I don't even care if you go. You know what I mean? He's like, and he was trying to teach me Spanish. And I said, God, what was it? He said, I don't even care. But his mom was crying and gave me a big hug, and she cried, and she came and she was crying, and he took me away because they cut me off from seeing her the last few months because she wanted to keep me. Mm-hmm. They're like, she thinks she's your mom or something. So she wasn't even allowed. And she would come by and sneak into my room and give me little muffins. She would just come by and give me a muffin and then boogie. But the last day I was there, he was getting me dressed and getting me ready to go. And I said, man, I can't remember what he was calling me. He would always call me something like, you're my gringo. It's like, you're just a gringo. I could care less about a gringo. And I said, she came by and she said, you're the Los Locos Pequeño de la Luna. And she did like, Los Locos Pequeño de la Luna. She did it like that. And that means crazy boy from the moon.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She goes, I said, am I crazy? Am I your crazy gringo? And he said, no, you're mi amigo.
Aww.
And like I said, we're friends. And it was like, he was like, and then he finally got sad, like the last minute. So then they put me on a truck. So everybody rode around in a big truck in the back of it, like a MASH, you know, like the show MASH, like the old Korean war trucks, those big trucks. Everybody rode around. That was the taxi back then. They put me in the back of the truck, and it's like a mile drive to the airport, to the airstrip that they had there. Mm-hmm. It's not an airport. It was like a strip in the jungle. You could land a plane. It was like a mile drive, and people lined up and were waiting, and they were adios, Los Locos Pequeño de la Luna, adios. And there were kids running after the truck saying adios. And I was like in tears. I was blown away because I didn't know that they liked me. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I was like totally crushed by that. You know what I mean? It was like one of the most magical moments that I ever experienced.
Somebody from that town has to remember that.
I know.
If the whole town was lined up, someone's got to remember that.
I know. That's what I'm saying. And they were little kids, and they were kids my age that were running and waving. You know what I mean? Like I remember that. So, that would be a huge breakthrough if that got proven. You know what I mean? That would be a big thing because it would prove it. Because also, there's documents. I was in school that year.
Kind of cool. Sorry to cut you off. It before you finish your book.
Right. I put it in there.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. You know, the book I'm hoping is for history.
I'm sure the book's going to be amazing no matter what.
The book is, I'll tell you what though, there's some uncomfortable stuff in the book. You know what I mean? It's a little more graphic. I didn't go, so I've just finished the Seattle stuff
Right.
recently, and I didn't really get into a lot of the super, you know what I mean? I didn't turn it into a porno
Right.
kind of thing. So,
Right.
but I did say a lot, you know what I mean? I did refer to what was going on quite a bit. And thinking about, there were a couple recordings. One recording, I had my fan on in my truck. I'm driving to work and I was recording, and it was like very difficult to talk about. And I cried at that, you know, and I hit send, and I was listening to the recording, and you could barely hear it because the fan was on right underneath where my phone is on my dashboard.
Yeah.
And I wrote her, the person that's writing it, and I said, please don't make me say that again. Please don't make me do that again.
Right.
And so it worked. You know what I mean? Like there's a couple recordings that were very difficult to do. And she wrote me back and said, man, good job. But wow, you know, like,
It's probably by the act of you putting your consciousness, your awareness on these emotions, you're completing the trauma cycle.
exactly.
That. And I think it's so amazing. I mean, when you can get to a place and you cry, when I help people do a shadow work and I complete trauma, and if they can get there right away and they start crying, I'm like, oh, you're doing so good at this, because it took me for so long to like cry.
You have to accept that something bad happened.
Yes. And until then, you cannot.
And that it's not your fault, kind of thing. You know,
Right.
What happened to me? Well, I'll just skip. I just want to generally say while we're on the subject, because this is the focus of your channel, really. What happened was when they put me back, I had no memory. They erased my memory. They blanked me out. That's why I say it was a clone. You know what I mean? They took my consciousness into this one, and I had no memory of this life.
Right.
And I lived this life, and they took my consciousness back and put me back here, and I had no memory of this life. I had my memory back. I had memory of mom and dad all of a sudden, just after that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered it all later, 30 years later after the fact. But during that time, the trauma from this life, all the BS that happened, the sexual abuse and the physical abuse and all the ETs and shocking stuff, I had the PTSD, I had the trauma, I had relationship problems. I still have problems from it.
Yeah.
I carried that with me and I didn't know why. And that was the hardest thing, was that after I got my memories back, I could say, it was easy to solve most of it. Because that's why. I had claustrophobia overnight. When my sister used to play hide and seek, and she would always find me, I would always be like in a small, tight little area because I wasn't afraid of spaces. But after I went into space and did my 20 back, I had claustrophobia because I had been injured in a small space.
You were playing hide and go seek?
And then I played hide and seek, and she was like, why weren't you under? I thought you were under the bed. And I was like, no, I can't go down there. I was terrified of small spaces all of a sudden, like overnight. Like, and she goes, what are you talking about? My sister, what are you talking about? You're not afraid of small places. Like, I am. I was like, I can't not go under there. She tried to hide with me against my cousin. And she was like, come down here. I was like, I cannot hide in there. You know what I mean? Because, so what I'm saying is an issue came with, the issues came with
emotions transferred, even if it was subconscious or subconsciously.
Right. So, and then the time, so this is what people don't know about it. The first thing that they say is like, huh? You went through time travel? So where was your parents while you were gone? I was back 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later. And they go, well, where were you? So there were two of you? Yes, there was. And after the other one ceased to exist, my life got way better. I immediately got better.
20 years was up.
Yes, after that other person. So during that time, I was having there were times when I would dream and wake up in that other body, wake up and go, where the hell am I? And go back to sleep and wake up. Oh, what was that? That was a weird dream. You know what I mean? Like that happened.
Yeah.
So but then after that other person went, I lost a lot of the disability that person had that I shared as well.
Wow. I really do think that it transfers your consciousness or your aura around you. It stays with you, even from your past lives.
Absolutely right. We're continually learning, and you got to think that where I am now, like if I were to die today And I personally believe in reincarnation. I think there's a lot of evidence for it. And I personally believe in it. I don't believe that you just die. It just doesn't make sense. I think that where I'm at today emotionally would come with me to the next. And I would pick up, emotionally, not like, knowing how to read and write or any kind of, but you take your skills. Like if you're really good with your hands, you would take that skill with you. Like that's how people that are born little kids are concert pianists when they bang, because they already had a lifetime of it. They were mastered it in their past life, and you take that stuff with you. You don't have the, you don't have your street address. You don't take that memory with you, but you do take it.
Do you want to talk about what happened when you left Peru to the next place?
That was Seattle. I went back to Seattle, and that was kind of like back to the boys, the foster home.
Right.
And that was the sex stuff. That was like straight up Pizzagate. Literally, it was that society that we're seeing now. The Pizzagate stuff, when they talk about the Podesta emails and the Comet ping pong, you know what I mean? And it really bothers me that they're working hard to cover it up. And a lot of people believe because they saw it on HBO that it's not real. They're like, oh, that stuff ain't real. And it's terrible because it is real. And and what's happening is that if a network, which HBO is owned by CNN Worldwide, by the way.
I didn't know if I should say that.
And CNN is the one that covers it all up. And then the New York Times is also the same probably company, the New York Times, and I think the Washington Post, along with the BBC that covers up everything in England, the Jerry Saville stuff. Right. So it's all the same corporation that's doing the covering up. And people believe it, but you should be shocked that's what's really more scary than anything is that the cover up is not getting busted.
Right.
Do you get what I mean? Like that's really more scary than anything. They're getting away with lying about it to our face.
Well, that's what the president talks about.
And look at what's happening to him. And you know what I'm saying? Like they're actually doing well at trying to take him down.
Right.
That is terrifying to me. Like if he loses, and Biden's one of them. I mean, I don't want to take this political, and I don't want to try to sway votes. I didn't come here for votes.
I'm not a politician. I'm not any of those, but
right. I think that
I'm watching these things that are happening.
I think that they have impossible jobs. It's impossible for everybody to like any president, period, even Obama, and everybody liked Obama. It's an impossible job, but it's like you kind of do see it kind of shaping up. It's not that I like Trump. It's just that I won't be told to hate him.
Right. They're
not going to make me hate somebody with a bunch of BS. And you can tell it's BS. Like if I met you, we get done with this interview, and I say goodbye, and we see you, and then the media tells me that you're horrible and you do all this stuff. I'm still not going to hate you because I'm told to hate you. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll formulate my own opinion on who I like and who I don't like. Thank you very much.
Right.
I feel like the president isn't getting a fair shake. People are hating him because they're being told that everybody hates him. Everybody hates him. So people are like, yeah, well,
I think they're being fed a lot of lies from little things, which is in politics, but they're taking it to a crazy another level.
Right. It's like nuclear powered now, whereas it used to be solar powered before to make us hate and like them. It's totally nuclear bomb kind of level at this point.
Do you and I do want to go into Seattle just because I think even though I know it's a really hard subject and to hear about, and it just blew me away the last time what you're talking about, especially when you talked about how when the doctor came and he was like the only kind person, and he was so appalled and he just wanted to make sure you were, and he realized you were on drugs,
So yeah. So what happened was, just to give people that are unfamiliar a rundown, is that going back to Seattle, it was a big house. Like I said, it was like a mansion, and it was on a big giant piece of property. We had a swimming pool. There was a lake there. I mean, it was big. They had their own airstrip, and it was on one of the islands around Seattle. Boys came and went, and the owner wasn't hardly ever there. It was his wife, and she said she was just as much a slave as we was. She was on a super tight budget. Everything was budgeted. It's not like he was a billionaire, and she was not able to go shopping.
That's so
she
crazy.
Was just like, he gave her like $100 a week for gas and cigarettes, kind of. We lived there, and then during the summers, they had a calendar of parties that they would have, and they would come and get boys and go to parties elsewhere on the West Coast, and they would have parties there on the property, and they were sex parties, and they, they were dancing, and they had a stage. They had young girls that were up on the stage in the front, far away from us.
Did they drug all the kids before y'all went out
Yes,
there? Did everyone
absolutely.
drug?
They gave you a shot.
Mm-hmm.
There was an intravenous drug, and it lasted like 4 hours. And you couldn't feel a damn thing. You couldn't feel it. It was like you're totally zonked out. But then after it wore off, it was like, you know what I mean? It was painful. After it wore off, it was like all the abuse that you had taken to that point kind of caught up to you.
Right.
And they would go right up until the sunrise, right until the crack of dawn. And that as soon as there was any amount of natural light that came, the party was over. Boom, everybody went home. And it was like they had recordings. It was a calendar. It was all like each party had its own theme for that time of year.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you know what I mean? Like it was very established, and it was a very old practice to them, but they had it down to a science. And then, so they had the boys were a section, and it was like they could do whatever they want with us. They chained us up and walked us out. And some parties had new people there. Most of them didn't. Most of the time, everybody there had been been there before. So they knew what was going on.
Are they all from Seattle or from the West Coast?
They were from all over.
All over the United States?
Mm-hmm. There were people from all over. A lot of people came out from Washington. There were a lot of soldiers. There were a lot of military people there. There were politicians there, local people, mayors and such, and business people there. But what happened was, on the party, when there was new people there, every now and then the people would come and be like in shock. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Do you know what I mean? Like they were like,
they weren't aware of what they were going to.
Oh yeah, there were people there that just were like,
and would they leave?
Dumbfounded.
What happened if they would just leave?
They were being watched, and I don't know what happened to them. There were times like nobody said a word. Like they would be dumb. And like you said, what you mentioned earlier, the doctor, the guy was a doctor. He was like a surgeon or something, and he came down and he checked us out. And he looked me right in the eye, and he checked, you know what I mean? Like he was like, check me with a flashlight and everything. Let me see your flashlight. And he was like, check my eyes, and then he checked my arm, and he went, whoa. And he recognized, he said the name of the drug, the medical, whatever it was.
Oh, he recognized
whoa. He's like, wow, you guys are drugged. You know, like he knew.
Wow.
And he was like, they need water. He's like, it's too cold out here for them, and you need to get the water, and you need to get a blanket on their temperature. These guys, it's too cold for them to be what they're doing. And he was like, totally like, whatever. He was in a panic from what he was seeing. Like he was not cool with what was going on.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, you know, like a lot of the people came, most of the time they, you know, a lot of the people didn't participate. They just came and wanted to watch. There was like a crowd around watching us, and they would make us stand weird, you know, pose. Like there were people that just, they could do it. That was the rules of the party. Do as you wish. They kept saying that over the loudspeaker. Do as you wish. That'll be the sum of the law. There was like, they have music, you know, like rave music, but it was back in the 80s. It was like Led Zeppelin and what was the song Take On Me from Aha that came out that year? I was at one of those parties. Like I learned that song twice. When it finally came out in my real life, it was old to me. I was like, this is an old song when it came out.
Yeah, because you had already.
I had heard it on that party at the parties, and it was on a playlist. But in between the songs, a voice would come over on the music. You know what I mean, like a DJ voice,
Mm-hmm.
and say different stuff. Like it's almost midnight. Are you ready for the darkness? You know what I mean? You know, like the DJs do on radio. Right. It was like that. They had a DJ, mm-hmm. and then boom, at midnight they turned all the lights down. They turned the light. It was totally dark. And everybody was like, "Yay!" And then it was like all the lights came on and the music came on. And that was like one of their party themes.
Were they? But they were. I would think they were recording these people. Were they?
There was so. Yes, at some point they said they changed. So there was a carpet they put out. It was out in the field, not in the field, but on the yard, which was, 3 or 4 acres of an area that was on a lawn, and they put a carpet down, and I wasn't allowed to leave the carpet. There was pillows, and it was like a carpet, and they called it the pit. They called it a pit. You couldn't leave the pit, and while we were, whatever, you know what I mean, like. We were supposed to face in a certain direction on the carpet. There was a place on the carpet, like always look here at the carpet. because in the distance there was somebody with a camera taking pictures. And so we weren't supposed to face the other way. We were supposed to face towards the center so that person who was behind us would get a picture taken of them.
So they would use that to bribe that person to do what they wanted.
I would imagine so. We speculated that, the boys, we sat around like after it was over, the next few days, it was like easy on us. We had food. They gave us the leftovers food from the party. And it was like, we were healing.
Right.
But we would speculate that, like, why would they take their pictures? There was a guy, and a couple boys like saw him. It was like the one boy saw him going out there earlier in the day, and it was like he said it was a guy that had a giant lens on a camera going out in the bushes, and it was like far away too. But they had that set up. That was a real thing.
Because when I lived in Los Angeles, I lived there with my boyfriend, and we just went skateboarding to the different beaches. We didn't really. I was there to work, to learn, and then when I wasn't there, I didn't go to the parties. I would go to set, and then I would, maybe have a drink, maybe at a pub, but then I would go home. I would never really, I was more into waking up early and going into nature. But I had heard through the grapevine that parties of those sorts were happening.
Wow.
And they would, for men in Hollywood, they call it the Velvet Mafia, and they say for men it's harder on men than is women. I mean, women, they like always joke you get casting couch and whatnot, but for men, let's say you're straight, but your agent wants you, if you wanted to get this audition, you have to give your agent a blowjob just to get the audition.
Wow.
And
wow.
then if you want it from that director, he's like maybe choosing 2 or 3 of you. He makes all of you give blowjobs, and then like give him blowjob, and then like this is not everybody, but I heard this a lot.
Wow.
And so they had to do gay things to get parts, and so a lot of times, by the time the people, they were on set, but then they have all these other problems happening, but it's because it emotionally they went through so much to get it. But when they were doing that, like in the van and the limo, this one guy was telling me these stories, and he said his other friends, they would videotape them. And then later they're like, well, if you don't do this, we're going to release that video.
We're going to release the video. Wow. Wow.
And that was just, look, my mind was blown when I was like, what? And I was like, no, maybe the best person by the best actor. It's like, the best person fitting the character. And he's like, that's sweet, Heidi, but that's not really how it works, And,
wow.
And so it was just, it's so crazy to me that, so that's where I asked that question. And so, and I just.
Yeah. Well, most people that live a more vanilla lifestyle, you know what I mean? Like using the term, don't think that anybody would not.
I like to call them 9-to-5ers.
Yeah. Most 9-to-5ers don't think that anybody would not be a 9-to-5er.
Right.
Right. Or
right.
not vanilla,
right.
like you wouldn't do that. And
right.
then most people that have something, that explore sexually, it happens for a short time in their life, and that's it. They move on. They don't understand that it's like industrialized.
Right.
It's an industrial level at that. When you're talking about the Hollywood, like what I experienced, like they weren't developing a new way to do this. This wasn't new to them. It was the same old that has obviously been going on for hundreds of years. Like they knew exactly what they were doing. And like I said, they had a calendar that they followed, and it was like it
wasn't like Labor Day weekend. It was like some sort of cult.
It was like
weekend.
Yeah, the same way that we celebrate Christmas, and you know what I mean. Like, okay, Christmas is coming. We get our time to put the lights up. Like it was like that. Do you get what I'm saying? Like it had that kind of structure of holiday for them.
How many years?
But it was through the summer.
Do you think that this pedophilia has been going on within the politicians running?
So as you can imagine, I did a bunch of research into it, and not only the pedophilia, but the ritual human sacrifice that I did witness on that property as well. Ritual human sacrifice where they killed a young boy, and it was like.
How do you even deal with seeing that?
It was surreal, and at the time that I saw it, put me into shock, and it was hard on me, but it wasn't until like months later when the reality of it really set in that it really hurt. You know, you get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
when we go to those
First time
parties,
that you're
I
seeing
was always look into the house and think, is that what's going on right now? You know what I mean? Like the night of the parties, I was like, is somebody in there being murdered?
Is that what you mean when the little boys would come and they would never come back?
I think a lot of them, that's what happened. Yeah, exactly. They would go, or they would go to a party and be, you know, who knows what happened. But there was a lot of, you know, they would never come back, and we were not allowed to talk about them. After they were gone, we were not allowed to speak of them.
And if you did,
that was against the rules. Huh?
And if you did, what happened?
You get grounded. You get put in your room, or you go without food.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying? You'd have to go without food and go to your room and stay there, you know, and there was a gardener there that would kick your ass. But I never had that happen, but that was the thing. There was like, she did have muscle there. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't really step out of line.
Do you want to talk about when you saw the human sacrificing?
I mean, if you want to hear it, a lot of people are really hurt, you know what I mean? Devastated by it. So that was like in the very beginning, like in the first 2 weeks.
It's not something I want to hear, but I think an awareness that something like this is happening.
Well, look, okay, I want to say this. So I did a live talk when I went to Australia, and I kind of did a presentation on what I had learned about the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you say how long have they been doing it, pretty much the religion that practices ritual human sacrifice of kids has been around for like 12,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's been around. Like, and at one point in history, a little more than 2,000 years ago, the entire world practiced it. The American Indians, the Mississippian Indians, go look. I've had people. I gave that talk, a lot of people were pissed off at me and came on Facebook and were like, "Can you prove it?" And I had to back it up, and I could. It's really easy. The Mississippian Indians, the Hawaiians, the Irish, the the Italians, the Romans, the Canaanites, the Tunisians, they're all across the Middle East, the Philippines, the Manila, all of Micronesia, and in South America, of course, the Mayans. Everybody in the world practiced ritual human sacrifice. They would take people, and specifically, so this particular religion would specifically do children, and they would sacrifice their kids and eat them, not just kill them. They would kill them and eat them. So everybody did it. And
were they all doing the adrenochrome, or were they?
Well, that's what it is the adrenochrome from little kids. When they get that, when that goes into their bloodstream, it's a drug, and it's kind of like the Limitless drug. If you've seen the movie, it makes you smarter. It makes, when I had to participate the one time, I began to, that night, they put us under. So remember the IV bag when they put us under. The first night I was there, I went through a ceremony, and they did that, and he gave us some. I had a sip, and then they put us on tables and gave us the IV bag and put us under, and he tested us. He was doing it for his own, you know what I mean, to channeling. I woke up, I snapped out of it like I don't know, maybe 4 a.m. that morning, but I was smart. Like, all the damage that I'd been through from the trauma-based mind control was gone, and I was smart, and I began to formulate my escape. I began to plot my escape. It was easy to me. It seemed like it was going to be easy. And then later on, when the sun came up about 8 in the morning, it went away. It wore off. And I got stupid again. I turned stupid again.
Wow.
So, and I wanted more. And I remember I wanted more. I remember that I wanted, like it had
back.
No, I wanted it back. Exactly. And but there was more than that. There was like a withdrawal of it. Like, I wanted it back. But, and I knew what it was. I mean, I knew how it happened. I didn't want to, I've never had that urge to be like that.
Wow.
But, so in finding the history, so now look back. So this is important. Think about this.
Right.
When you think about Christianity, that's what Jesus did. It wasn't that he saved your soul and he died on the cross. Like a lot of people, Christian, Jesus stamped out ritual human sacrifice. At the Last Supper, he said, no, you're not going to kill any more people. You're going to drink wine. Because also the ceremony that they went through was the exact same as a communion. It's the same ritual as a communion that the churches do. And he said, you're going to eat bread, will be my body. The bread will be my body, and the wine will be my blood. You quit doing it. And everywhere, and then look at all the violence where Christianity spread over the next 600 years. It stamped out ritual human sacrifice. We live in a different world now because of Christianity, not because of the political structure, everything, but it erased it. Except for these people. Except for these people that are in the middle of running everything, that coincidentally are still empowered. So it's almost like they took it for themselves and got rid of the competition by using Christianity to get rid of it. So, wow. So our conversation took a turn.
It did take a turn. I've been, I told you I was taking that David Wilcock class, and he talks about the group that you're talking about, the Illuminati.
Yep.
That they came from Moldova and Mars, and they were
the old planet.
And when their planet exploded, they came here to Antarctica, but then there were different places on the Earth that they were placed. But the Illuminati believed that they were the ones brought here. They were the superior race.
I mean,
I don't know. This is just from my.
Well, I don't follow anybody. So I want to say it like that. Here's my disclaimer is because of the things I remember and the extraordinary claims. If I watch somebody else, another insider that comes forward, and I watch them and I take their information, I go, oh, you know what? That reminds me. I did that too. Then when I speak about it, I really get a lot of hell over it. So in order to not cloud up the water of my own account, I don't watch other people like Emery Smith, and everybody loves him. And you know what I mean? I've heard a lot of good things about him, but I haven't watched a stitch of his info. Not because I don't
anything he's done either.
I haven't watched not one stitch of it, and not because I have something against him or anything like that. It's just because if I recognize something like that and then I say it, it's going to just take credibility away from me. It look like I'm copying him.
Right.
That's what it looked. A lot of people said that in the very beginning, that I was copying other people. So I just quit watching it altogether. And plus, trust me, like my own memories of living in space and my own memories of it are enough. I don't need to research and learn more.
So you left. Okay. So then you're in Seattle, and that's first of all, going from Peru there and then going to Seattle is completely different experience.
It was a huge culture shock, and especially after
living in huts, in a little hut on the mud,
into a mansion, into
a mansion.
Well, I mean, especially after the send off. The other thing was that Peru, there wasn't money, but there was love. Do you get what I'm saying? Like
there was money, but no love.
It was a war. Yes, exactly. When I left there, I remember that it was just so devoid of any kind of, even us boys between ourselves, we were not friends with each other. Everybody there was just like emotionally dead from what we had been through, from the way we were treated and the rules that we lived under, just the way it was. It was so unhappy. And I had already known I'd already seen how people lived in Peru, I saw people that were happy. I saw people in Peru that were happy, that they had no money, but they had happiness. And I witnessed it, and I knew some of it. So I knew that's what I wanted to be.
Do you think that subconsciously has sabotaged your relationship with money?
Oh my God, yes. Wow. Holy shit. You know what I mean? Like you just said it. You just said something that like everybody says to, but it was like, maybe that's what it is, because I envied the happiness, not the money. When I saw she had a fancy car and a beautiful home, and he had money, I didn't envy him. You know what I mean? I thought, I think in general, people that take advantage of other people,
same
people that are super wealthy and they think they're better than everybody because they have money. And I've met hundreds like that.
It's so it's the
I think they're idiots.
Unattractive thing to me.
Well, I think they're dumb. I think they're idiot. I think they're ultimately spiritually stupid, because it's going to come back on you later.
I just feel their sadness.
Yeah, well, it's a false happiness. It's a false happy. But the thing is, at some point, they realize that they're not better than people, that they're actually worse. And it's in there. And you can kind of see them dancing around it if you get to know them. And not everybody with money is evil, man. I'm not going to say that either. I know people that have a lot of money that are righteous people too. But I mean that it's about that's because the money is not what makes them happy, or not what makes them have self-worth. Even if you took their money away, they would still have a good amount of self-worth and be able to be happy.
Right.
And so it's the people that build their self-worth around their possessions. They, you know what, that guy looks happy, but you know what, I got more money than him, so I'm better off. And that's kind of, they think that, and it's a lie.
Well, I think people who don't practice sitting with themselves have to find other things to make themselves feel good. But I did a whole thing, not to put that on you, but the only reason I say that is because I did, I took a 3-year break from dating, like seriously dating for the past 3 years. I didn't date anyone. I did maybe 1 or 2 short films, but nothing serious. Like my job was to go inside and search inside. Why am I manifesting this? Why am I doing this? Okay, this is happening. What's the common denominator? Things happen and they get so great and then they explode. So what is that emotion? And I keep looking and I mapped it out. And and I just took these 3 years to dive on in. And I had an interesting relationship with money that from just simple things that people would say to me when I was little, or things that would happen that I thought were happening a certain way. And so the same way, like some people I knew had money were just kind of, and then some people had money were amazing. But, and then it was just like little things that you go through that when you're younger, you don't really know how to see everything. And so you're taking it all these parts in, and everyone has, their own story of why they are the way they are. But until people take the time to look, why do I think this? And like, okay, well, what do I think about money? What do you think about money is how you're manifesting it right now. And you're like, okay, well, how does this serve me? My friend said this to me the other day. He says, whenever I call him and I'm like, oh, I'm swallowing, I'm like, and self-pity, help me. I'm like, I have to get myself out. And I know I got to call him because he'll be like, well, how does that serve you? I'm like, oh, it hurts. So true. And then I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna think about this for a moment, and then I'll call him back, and I'm like, and I literally would start laughing at myself because I'm like, give me attention, or like, some sort of something. But it's like taking the accountability. But unless you sit with yourself and observe and actually acknowledge these things that did happen, and right now I think that's so beautiful how you're acknowledging, like, wow, I went from this poor place and they were so happy to this rich place and they were so unhappy, and I want to be like the poor place that's happy. And I'm like, well, your word is your wand, and so when you say things like that, maybe you can say, I
wow,
want happiness.
I never realized it until you said it now. And in my own life, it's played out too, but on a smaller scale than during that time, those times.
Yeah.
That was like a very stark contrast. Boom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in my life, it's played out too. And I've always been one, like I've always, later on, we haven't even talked about
we haven't even gone to space yet.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about really what everybody wants to hear about, what I mean, laser beams and stuff.
Yeah.
But
I think it's important that
later on, it was always the search for love. I was always searching for somebody to love me because I was so alone. I was, you know what I mean? I was a worker drone, and, I had no family unit ever. And because of Peru, because of the warmth I had, an ounce of warmth I had in Peru, I was always searching for that. And I did. And towards the very end, I did have forged a few relationships. It was like a huge triumph. Like I said it to people before, like, you got to think about where you start out and where judge your success, what your success is in life. Not everybody has to be a billionaire to be successful, because some people start out with absolutely less than nothing. Some people start out with a huge mountain to climb just to get their head up out of water. And then if they make themselves into something, it's like a huge triumph. It's like way more triumphant than somebody that started out with $1 million and turned into $7 billion. Mm-hmm. You get what I mean? Like, and that's what I felt like in that time. At the end of my 20 and back, in those last few years, I had love. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I was loved by people. And to me, it was a huge triumph. I didn't want to leave. Even though I was still a slave, I was still broke, I was still being treated bad, but I was being loved by people. And so I didn't want to leave that. That's what I think might be why I remember, because I can't drop names, but there are a couple other people.
Say, I want to remember you.
Yes, absolutely. At the end, that's right. I had a girlfriend there on the Ceres Colony, and she was a slave as well. She was a sex slave in the red light district, and she didn't want to remember it. She said whatever cocktail they give you to make you forget, I want a double shot. She said it. That was what she said all the time. Whenever the subject came up of having your memories blank, she said, I want a double shot of that, whatever that stuff is. I don't want to remember. She didn't want to remember any of it.
And if you walk by her now.
Well, and I said to her, I said, what, you don't want to remember me? Honey, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, come on, you got to remember me. And she said, we decided, at the end, we said, look, let's remember one thing about each other that nobody else had, you know? And she said, I'll never forget your eyes. I can never forget your eyes. And I said, I'll never forget your hands. Hands and eyes. And then after that, whenever we saw each other, it was okay. I said, goodbye, I love you, good night, hands and eyes.
Aww.
Like, that's what we would say to each other. And when I would go home at night, you know, when I would come and see her, I was like, we would always say hands and eyes, hands and eyes. And that was our thing, you know. So that's a whole nother.
I think maybe another day we'll pick up when you leave Seattle and go to space.
Yeah.
Because it's so interesting.
Yeah, we you know what though? Thank you though for this, because nobody asks about Peru. Zero. Like, I've done like 70, coming up on 80 interviews, 2 hours a piece. You know what I'm saying? Radio shows. I've done TV shows. I've been on Gaia. No one's ever really got Peru details out of me. No one ever gave a shit. And so thank you for that.
I'm so very interested in Peru, because everyone I have met from Peru, not just my one friend, but other people they have that little light. And none of them, it's not about anything. It's about, she's my friend that she told me was probably one of the best compliments of my life the other day. She goes, we were at dinner, and she's like, I was at this dinner and the music came on, and I was like, I'm gonna dance. Who's gonna dance? And she just starts, she always gets up and she starts dancing. And then she gets up and she goes, anyone want to dance? And she goes, no one got up and danced. So I went to the dance floor, and then I came back to the table and I was like, if Heidi was here, she would be dancing with me. And then she went back. I go, you left the dance floor to tell that to the table, and then you went back to the dance floor? I was like, I feel so honored.
That sounds about right. That sounds about what I would remember. You know, not everybody's like that, but there were a lot of characters that were,
it
like
was
I
just
said,
that
flamboyant.
love of life, you know. And it wasn't, she's not there to say anything about what she has. She's just her, you know. And it's like that. And I just find that culture so interesting and enjoyable. And I live in Houston, and it's a very international city. And,
yes, it is.
And I love how international it is, and how many different people I meet from all different cultures, and how beautiful all these people are from all around the world. And I just find them so interesting. That
I think it's tough on people that only live in a monoculture. Like, where I'm at now is basically one culture for a long ways, for 2 hours in every direction. And you can see it, that it's you know, I don't want to say it like I don't want to call names or like sound like I'm picking on people, but it's a very rich thing that they don't have.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, you can tell that it's a resource that is sorely needed, like more culture.
Right.
You know, like travel.
I haven't, you know, I've traveled a lot to Mexico and maybe in the United States, but not very much out of the United States. But I mean, I don't know if I told you that when I used to date this guy from Monterey like 6 years ago. And when I went down to Monterey, they took me for like 6 hours. They were going to sell me human trafficking.
What?
Yeah. And they took me from the airport. Like we were just going from state to state, almost coming from Guadalajara. There was like 20 of us. We went from Monterey to Guadalajara, and then we flew back from Guadalajara back to Monterey. And when I'm getting off the airplane, the TSA was all, ma'am, I need to see a paper like coming into the country. I'm like, but I came from state to state. I didn't even bring that with me. You know, I was like I was in Mexico. I wasn't coming out. And they made up something, and my boyfriend's eyes were like this big, and he knew. And he started getting all his friends' phones, and he hid them. And I was like, just gonna act like this is normal, you know? And like, he hid phones all around me. He goes, if they find this phone, text me on this phone. If they find this phone, text me on this phone. And then they take me into the airport, into like this room, and she measures me. Like, I felt like I was at my agent, you know. She would measure me and tell me, you're half a centimeter over, you know, or like, And then she weighed me. She took my temperature. She checked to see my tattoos. Then I was like, okay, this is not normal. And then, maybe within like 20 minutes, this really pretty girl from Cuba came in, another girl from Puerto Rico, another girl from Colombia. And one by one, I was like, this is not good, And then these like 3 really good looking guys came in, and we were there for I just sat there, and I don't know if you ever remember that show, The Mentalist.
Vaguely, yeah.
Vaguely, but the main character is like,
you were breaking it down.
This 3-piece suit, and no matter what's happening, he's like cool, calm, and collected, and he never loses it. So the whole time I'm in there, I'm like, what would the Mentalist do? So I'm like, you gotta be cool. And so I just pulled my book out and I just read, and I acted like I didn't speak any Spanish, and they acted like they didn't speak any English. And like six hours in, they put us in and my boyfriend texted me that they would. He was trying to get me out. Their lawyers trying to get me out. They wouldn't release me, and they were going to take us. Don't be alarmed. They're going to take us to a different location, and they put us in a van. And for each person, there was like how many? Maybe like 7 of us, and there were 4 security guards with like huge guns. They get in this van, and then they take us to this little hole in the wall in the middle of Monterrey, and we get in this room, and it's like 3 folding chairs, the 3rd row seat of old, like those 1980s Suburban. And it was like this little porta potty, like on the wall. You can also wash your hands. And they're like, you're going to sleep in here tonight. I'm like, I'm not sleeping in here tonight. And they're like, we're going to take you to Reynosa tomorrow. And I'm like, fuck that. I am not going to Reynosa tomorrow. And so, I mean, that's kind of like where they are known for shady shit, is on the border of Reynosa. And so this is over by McAllen, Texas. Like, and so I pulled my phone out. And this other girl had pulled her phone out earlier, and I was like, I wouldn't be on your phone. Like, while they see that, they're going to take your phone, like amateur cannot be moved. And the lady came in and took it away. And so I would just like subtly like be texting. And then finally I told him, I was like, get me out of here. And so apparently him and my ex-boyfriend and his 2 brothers, they, when we were driving in the van, they were standing, all 3 of them were standing at the front of this place. Their lawyer told them where they were going to be taking us. And the guy in Spanish said, look, it's her boyfriend. She thinks he's going to save her. And they all started laughing. And I was like, I just read my book, act like I wasn't listening. And I was like, oh, shit.
Wow.
We get in there, and I'm in this room. And the oldest brother goes up to the guy. And so there happened to be one of the people on the plane that was with us in the wedding party. His dad's friend was head of immigration in Mexico City, like in the president's office. And so they got a hold of that guy, and they called him, and they said, hey, this is happening. She's an American. They have her here, and da-da-da. And he goes, okay, go to this location and offer them money for her. Ask however much you want for her, and then they should give you to her. And if that doesn't work, call me back. So they go there, and they go up to the cop standing there, and they said, well, how much for Heidi, the oldest brother? And he goes, you can't afford her. And he's like, well, just give us a number. And then, and he's like, well, you can't. He goes, don't even bother. Don't even waste your time. Like, and he's like, just give us a number. He goes, all of you combined and all of your friends, you cannot afford her. And so, and brother goes, okay. And he pulls out his phone. And the cop goes, doesn't matter who you call, you're wasting your time. You're not going to get her back. And so Pablo goes, and he goes over and he calls, the guy in Mexico City. And then 3 minutes later, he said he was watching, and the guy stood up straight, and he said, yes, sir, yes, sir. He comes inside, and all of a sudden they speak English. Heidi Hite, I'm so sorry. Come out. This has been a big inconvenience and like misunderstanding. And I remember as I stood up, the girls like grabbed my arms. They're like, please take me with you. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I wish I could take everybody out of here, and I walk out, and they take me upstairs into this huge room. And this was the thing that struck me the most, was like this, I don't even know how big this room was. Tables, and they had like big, like when you go to the grocery store, you get the big grocery bag. Big grocery bags overflowing of passports everywhere up there. Like, she had trouble finding my passport. And I was like, oh my God, that's when it was it was like
that's how many people had been taken.
How many people have been taken. And so I get into the car, and and I'm all, you know, the whole time I never thought that my boyfriend was gonna was not gonna save me, you know. And so and I was like, you guys had me the whole time, right? And he's like, we almost didn't have you. We couldn't get a hold of that guy in Mexico City because they were at a big convention. And so for me, that's when I started following human trafficking. It was like 6-7 years ago. And so
Wow.
I mean, like, you know, I was detained, but and nowhere can it compare my story to your story. But it just brought an awareness that things were not as I thought they were. And that's when I started following people like Dan Bongino. He's that ex-Navy SEAL. And
I don't know.
he's an ex-Navy SEAL. And him and his friends who are ex-Navy SEALs, they formed, I guess they're privately funded. And they go in and they save these pedophile rings. Like that's their job, is they go in and he tweets about it. And so
okay, so I worked in 2016, late 2016. I was an advisor for a group like that went in and rescued people. They called and questioned me, and they wanted me to be an advisor, possibly. You know, I didn't have the info that they needed, so I didn't go. But I was okay with it. Like I had a small chance to actually go in and work with them, like in the field,
right?
And I would have jumped on that.
And I think, like, how brave are they? And I kind of, you know, I don't want to get political or anything, but from what they say is their full-time job is to go in and save not just children, like human trafficking people. They go in and they're like full on, you know, missions to go save people. But they say that Trump has helped the most out of all the presidents ever.
The Trump administration has funded, and
Yeah.
they were waiting on funding. I try to tell people this, and the thing is, again, the cover-up thing. But here's the other thing: is that most people, like you, before your personal experience, if somebody told you that this was going on that kind of scale, you'd be like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
And then if CNN or HBO or somebody had a thing and to debunk it, you would give it fair shake, because you're like, who gets human trafficking? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're an American. You're in America. I've never heard anybody being taken and coming back. You get what I'm saying? Like, people run away and they never. But we don't know about it. But really, the rest of the world is like, it's a big business.
Yeah. I mean, you can only sell guns and drugs once, but you can sell humans over and over and over. And it's so sad to me. And what are people, the reason I want to talk to you about this is not because I want you to have to relive your situation, but I want to bring awareness to the world about what's happening, because unless we have awareness, then we can't hold a space of compassion to help these people heal.
Well, you can't solve any problem if you don't know it exists.
Right.
For one, I don't talk about it because I have some kind of mission. I just knew that, like, for me, I always live my life thinking about the last 5 minutes of my life. Like, seriously, like, if that doesn't make, I know it doesn't make sense. It might sound kooky, but like, when I have a decision to make or something, like, I always tell myself, like, what am I going to think about that in my last 5 minutes of life? Like, I know that, not everybody dies instantly. Most people die and they have time to think of, like, wow, I'm dying. And everybody gets like something like 3 minutes. Like, even if you get mortally wounded, you're still alive in shock for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that in that moment, you're going to relive, you're going to look back, you're going to be desperate to look back on your life and desperate to find highlights of your bullet points of your life, like, to make it, yes, that was cool, I'm glad I did that. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I knew that all these things that I remember, like, there was no way I could take that to the grave with me.
I think make good decisions. You know, Danny and Brinkley says, is this good for you, and is this good for your family? Ask that question. Make good decisions. You know, if you ask yourself that, because every day, you know, this could be your last day. And, you know, did I make a difference today? Was I kind to someone? Was I compassionate enough? Or it's like little things that. And
I think about a lot of people when they're younger, like, are invincible, and they're like, whatever, I'm not dying anytime soon. But you're going to die. Here's the thing. You are going to die. We're, you know, it's part of the cycle.
Right.
And like I said, in that last bit of life, are you going to look back and go, shit, I should have not done that. I should have done something. You get what I'm saying? Like, I should have done that. I should have done that. Dang it. I had the chance. I should have done that. And that to me would be the most bitter, hardest pill to swallow, the most bitter, most horrible feeling in the world. And in my life, I try to avoid. People think that I'm brave. Like a guy at work, he's like, you are brave. He's like, seriously. He's like, you're one of the bravest people. I would never do that. What you just did.
You are so brave. It's
not bravery. It's not bravery. I'm avoiding that feeling. I'm avoiding that bitter feeling at the end of my life. When I in my day-to-day life, I'm avoiding that.
And doing something to avoid it.
But on little stuff too, like in little things, you know what I mean? I'm not out to be brave. I'm out to avoid that bitter feel. You know, wow. Ooh.
I think at the
heavy, man.
What I agree with what you're saying is that, and I think at the end of our life, when you die, that you have to experience everything you've ever done to someone else. Like it's a life review.
Right.
And
I think
you are your own judge.
I'll bet that happens too, because well, okay, I don't want to get into it. So hey, Heidi, we'll
pick up.
We're coming up on 2 hours, man. We're gonna have to.
Okay.
I could talk to
you forever about so many different things
for like a couple weeks. I know. So, and it's like been a big help. Like you have your own way. You have a very unique way, and some of the stuff you said earlier, it's like it's still hitting home. I gotta digest.
Okay, well, I just appreciate you so much, and I just want everyone to know that how kind you are, and you're like a genuine, real kind person. It's not just a front. Like you're always thoughtful, and you're always supposed to be like, "How are you? How are you doing it?" Or like just like little things, and I'm always like, "You're such a cool person. You're just a cool person." And I'm glad to know you.
I've been getting a lot of fanfare. I got to say, like in the last 4 or 5 months, like it's really ramped up. Like I've been getting a lot of people that have caught, and it's like, it's hard to do. Like people come up, you know what I'm saying, message me, and they're like, "Thank you so much," and I'm like, to me, I'm just a normal guy. Like I'm kind of, I'm a jerk in traffic too.
We haven't even got to the space stuff, but you're not normal.
Right.
You've had all of these crazy experiences that happened to you, and you're being so brave by talking about these in public. So to give other people the confidence that maybe they're not crazy, because I have heard of people who like their brothers or whoever, like are homeless, and they talk about the 20 and back, and
I'm way over like 2,000 people that have reached out to me with memories.
Wow. And that's 2,000 people that you've made a difference to, you know? And so, I just think that's beautiful.
It's not my goal. Like I don't set out to like, I'm really happy about the book. Like I said, my whole goal is not to take this to the grave.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like if I think about all the stuff that I've said, if I would have never told a soul and just shut up about it, in that last minute when I was dying, I would hate myself. I would hate myself if I didn't share what I knew, because there's a lot of the info that I talk about in interviews, I never use in my really day-to-day life with other people, because I don't force it on people, and most people are just not ready for it, you know?
But they need to be ready for it. And I don't know if you heard or not, but New York Times is going to do a piece on disclosure, and they're doing a piece. Oh, you did hear about it? I'm sure you did.
Little bits. I think that our disclosure is going to be super sanitized. Like
well, they're not going to talk about Roswell. They're going to talk about other landings.
They're going to give us some pack of lies. It's going to be a couple hundred years, you know what I'm saying, before it's like, hopefully not. Like hopefully not, but it could be.
About they're confirming alien ships that have been found in body parts, and I think the New York Times and another site are going to be running it out.
The thing that I want to see with disclosure is admittance that there are not just 5 ET races or 900 ET races, that there are billions, and that the universe is accessible all at once, and that there are trillions and trillions of worlds with intelligent life that all look different. That there's intelligent bird people, there's intelligent rat people, there's intelligent people, humans that look just like us are all over the place. And there are different versions of people that are intelligent. Once you get to a certain level of words, you're a person, no matter what creature you are. It could be a bucket of slime. If it's got 150,000 words, it's a person. Do you get what I'm saying? Like it's that level of soul. Mm-hmm. And so if we get a disclosure that tells us what the existence like that, then I'll be happy. But I think that we're gonna get we're gonna get a pack of lies.
They're
I think we're
gonna
get a
try.
bunch of bullshit.
They're gonna try to give us some bullshit.
Yeah.
But I think there's just too many people who are waking up.
I hope so.
That's what
Yeah. Nice.
And so, but next time I look forward to hearing, because I know when you're telling me about space, like where you went in space, and I thought just the little things that you told me, I had so many questions, but I couldn't jump into, and I still want to ask.
Awesome. We'll do it again.
Thank you so much.
Let's see how this does, and good luck with your channel, and better luck on your skateboard. and I'll be in touch, man. Send me the link. I'll put it on my tutor. Also, I'm hoping to get a website. So I wanted to say that a lot of people think that I've had people give me hell, like, oh, you're just doing this so you can write a book and make money, and would be nice, but that's not the reason. The reason is because I get asked, when is your book coming out? Literally every day nowadays. It used to be once or twice a week in the last 3 years. Once a week, somebody would be like, when is your book coming? I wish I could have your book. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's hard to write. But now it's like people are like, dude, I want your book. And the other thing is they're shadow banning SSP on YouTube. They're starting to hide this shit. And so I want the book out there so that it's harder to hide my story.
Just real quick, Eckhart Tolle, so how you say every day for an hour when you drive, he says when he was writing his book, he would put 30 minutes and he would just set that time. He would honor that time every day at the same time. And he'd go sit at the desk and he'd sit there and he's like, some days I'd sit there and nothing would come through. And then the next day I'd come through and, I'd think about some other things. And then some days I'd go in and I would just, I'd write one sentence and that's all I could get out. And he goes, and then some days I would go and I would just write hours and hours. He goes, but I had to walk on the step to get to the next step. And he goes, you can't force it. You just have to honor that time and ask your superconscious to flow through you.
That's what it's like. So there's a lot of days when during that drive, I don't write anything. I don't make a recording because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. And honestly, since that process has helped me remember so much more. Like it's helping with my memories. And that's the biggest question I get from everybody. How do I remember more? And I'm like, write shit down. And they put blocks on you on the way out. They hypnotize you and program you to not write anything down. But it's a muscle. You can break it, but exactly like, and I tell people, not an hour, couple minutes.
Yeah.
2-3 minutes. When you wake first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
First thing in the morning when your mind is fresh, when you're getting together, give yourself 5 minutes of focusing on those memories that don't make any sense. And then don't do it for the rest of the day. It'll come to you, And so that's awesome. I agree. Totally agree.
Dreams. I ask myself a question and I answer it in my dreams and then I wake up and I write it down. And I'll have like 3 different dreams I'll remember. And then I'll go back to bed and I'll have another dream and then I'll write it down. And that's how, and I'll know for that day, that's the emotions that I need to work on because my superconscious is talking to me through my dreams.
That's how it works. Mm-hmm. I think that hopefully, I never expected people to grasp that part of it, the remote viewing and the research that I've done. I've never expected people to grasp, but so many do. And so hopefully one day we'll get an official thing, like maybe not in our school curriculum, which little kids should be learning how to dream correctly.
But we can hold that space that's where it will go. But
that info should get proliferate and it'll get out there and it'll get to the point, websites like you can learn anything on YouTube now. And so getting it together and kind of settling on what works, I think is going to be very important for everybody in the future. Very, very, I think it's pinnacle for everybody in the future to access their subconscious, like you're saying.
Yeah, I love it. We'll talk about that another time.
Okay, I'm going to get out of here. It's
love
late.
You.
Will do. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.